Welcome to Green Talk by Green Care Solutions on NBC Radio, iHeartRadio, Spotify, and YouTube. Today we have Emmy Award-winning TV host Montel Williams up in here with us. Legendary, I must say. I'm your host, BREAL, along with my amazing co-host here.
And I'm Brian Gonzalez from Green Care Solutions.
What's up, everybody? It's your girl, Angela Mazzanti here.
Hey everyone, it's Yanitza Munoz. So this is a cannabis-friendly and educational program. You must be 21 years of age to listen. We are not doctors, but we have doctors for you at Green Care Solutions.
Yeah, so if you have any questions, give us a call at 951-609-4071. We are a 13-time award-winning company featured on Forbes and recently on Yahoo Finance.
And make sure you give us a follow on Instagram at Green Care Solutions 420. Our new website is greencaresolutions.com, and go check out greentalknews.com for all of our previous episodes.
So let's get into the show. Welcome, Montel.
Thanks for having me, for sure.
It's great to have you here.
Absolutely.
Yes, you've had such an amazing career. I mean, you started with the Montel Williams Show in 91 and it ran all the way to 2008. You've been featured on countless amount of programs from Oprah, Good Morning America, the list goes on. So I want to applaud you for that, by the way.
No, thank you. And I've also, what a lot of people don't know, and I bet you guys don't know that, I've been involved in this space, the cannabis space now, since 2000.
Yeah.
Long before this was like the gold rush and the green rush and everybody jumped aboard. You know, the majority of people out there don't know that I literally did more advocacy in probably 13 of the original 20 states that passed legislation than anybody in the country.
And I watched when you did it. You know, I saw when you made the transition into talking about cannabis and how it helped you through, you know, some of the things you were going through.
Back in the day when, you know, Hollywood kind of left me out there to dry. Because if you remember, this is 2000, 2001, you know, it wasn't Vogue. I literally just attended an event this past week with Ricky Williams. And a lot of people don't know Ricky Williams, you know, former Miami Dolphin.
Yeah,
he's been
player.
on our show.
Yeah, well, you know, Ricky, like, got, you know, basically filleted by the NFL for, you know, trying to fight against the fact that the NFL was trying to create, you know, a breed of drug, of opioid addicted, you know, Vicodin addicted, you know, performers who literally needed to have an alternative to what they were hooking them on, even to the day.
Yeah,
you know?
They don't like when someone with a platform such as yourself or even Ricky, you know, comes out against the pharmaceutical companies and say, hey, there's an alternative. And that's one thing you did. You went when it still was, you know, not necessarily popular like it is now, where people are more accepting and they embrace the possibilities of how they could be treated with cannabis or CBDs. But you went into it. You know, you jumped into the deep end, and I applauded you for it. I mean, those of us that knew, we were like, see, we need more guys like this that come into the space and educate people, because that's the thing about, you know, the difference between your show and others, I think, was that, you know, a lot of those other talk shows were based on drama and, you know, they tore families apart, and they weren't necessarily
looking for the most salacious common denominator.
Right, where you brought something different. You actually cared about people. You wanted to bring them together, and you tried to educate them. And you know, you got more involved in doing good with the talk show space as opposed to feeding on the drama. And I thought it was natural for you to come into that space and start educating on that level.
No, thank you. I mean, I think that's probably now what is still the biggest problem in this industry right now. This industry, this fledgling industry called cannabis, which includes all forms of cannabis, is the fact that everybody jumped in 2 feet, you know, trying their best to make as much money as they could, not recognizing that, you know, the people who are the potential customers out there, the people who actually need it the most, need the most education.
Right.
That's the issue. I mean, education. It's as important as location to real estate. Education is important to this entire new industry. And hopefully, you know, that idea is going to start to catch on, and more people are going to recognize the fact that they should be doing more of that than just trying to sell product.
Yeah, and that's how you educated yourself properly, because wasn't a doctor kind of said, you know what, I'm not giving any more prescription anymore.
Man, I mean, this is back in 2001. I mean, I got diagnosed with, I was diagnosed with MS back in 99, 2000. And, you know, the first line of defense for MS, and especially for neuropathic pain, is some form of opioid or some form of, you know, synthetic, you know, painkiller that really was never really ever made for long-term pain relief.
Right.
And, you know, I got to the point where, just like a lot of other celebrities and, you know, athletes are in the same position, you know, you get the doctor shop. So, I started doctor shopping way back in 2000. I had 3 or 4 doctors who write me a prescription for anything, anytime I wanted it, always. So, I was running around at one point in time, consuming what back then we didn't have Oxycontin. We had things called Talwin. We had drugs that were, the closest thing to heroin in the marketplace. And, I had doctors who were just trying to help me relieve my pain, but didn't understand that even what they were taught. They were taught the fact that opioids do not work for long-term pain relief. They know
they're
that.
Suppressives. They're not the cure.
They're not even suppressive. They were meant to be used for a short period of time to help your brain block the pathway of the pain signal.
Right.
Not for months and quarters of years and half a years and years. And, I literally went down that path and realized very quickly on that, I have an aversion to certain opioids. I mean, at one point in time, once you hit a certain number of milligrams, it doesn't do anything. And it wasn't doing anything for me.
Yeah, you got to keep stepping it up.
Your body adapts to it.
And in some ways, you never adapt. All you do is pee it out.
Yeah.
So literally, I had a doctor look me in the eye and said, dude, I'm done with you. I'm not writing any more scripts. This is worthless for you, and all you're going to do is end up killing yourself. So, and he said, his exact words were, I heard about this stuff, this marijuana thing, and, somebody was telling me that marijuana seems to work when it comes to MS, neuropathic pain. And I was like, really? He said, yeah, but there's a weird kind. This is back in 2001. Now, back in 2001, there were doctors who were using the term CBD cannabinoid, but we haven't heard of CBD until 5 years ago when Sanjay Gupta decided to put it on the map. And then he literally, I think, sent this entire industry on a goose chase that we're not going to recognize we've been on for another 2 to 3 years, chasing something that's not the end to all. We know for a fact now that there are well over 160 identified cannabinoids in the plant, and there's going to be more.
Yeah.
They just identified a new one last week, 2 new ones last week, THCP and CBDP. People don't understand that. It's going to continue down this path as we get through phytocannabinoids and phytonutrients and different things that we understand. But what we ought to lock into and do the research and understand that the doctor who identified this to begin with was Dr. Raphael Mechoulam, using U.S. money, using your taxpayer dollars that we literally use to fund research in Israel, discovered the fact that not only was there THC, there was CBD, there was CBN, there was the G.
All these different elements.
All these elements almost 20 years ago.
Yeah.
And most people who are listening and tuning in right now, I was in an event again a week ago, and I said, how many of you understand that the U.S. government owns the patent on CBD and other phytocannabinoids?
Well, I didn't
And out
know
of a group of 100 people in the room, only about 7 raised their hand. But if you look up that patent, which was written in 1992, the U.S. government knew back then.
They've been withholding all the information.
They understood back then. They wrote a thing that's called the abstract. And in the abstract to a patent, they have to identify what they feel is valid information about whatever it is they're trying to get a patent on. Yeah. And in that abstract, they talked about the fact that phytocannabinoids and cannabinoids were neuroprotectants. They were also, very, very, dealt very well with ischemia, which is stroke, but very well with oxidative diseases, which are, neuropathic, autoimmune diseases. They recognized that back then. Yet when you listen to the garbage that you hear on the news on a daily basis, they keep claiming that we need to do more research. How much more research do you have to do?
Oh, they've done it all. They've done it all.
Most people don't even know. I guarantee you that people who are tuning in right now don't know that this government has dispensed marijuana to patients for over 40 years.
Yeah.
You know that? Out of a program out of the University of Mississippi, it started under the first George W. Bush. There were 20 people who were literally getting a canister of marijuana every single month for the last 40 years, grown by the FDA.
Yeah.
Rolled into cigarettes.
I remember hearing those stories, yeah.
I've had 2 of the guests on my show. Back about 10 years ago, I still own a canister, one of the canisters that the marijuana came in. Now, we have a government that supposedly is there to do no harm. Right. Really. Right. So if you're there to do no harm, then therefore you shouldn't have been dispensing this, even if you didn't, if you thought that it wasn't good for people. But you dispensed it anyway for over 40 years. What right did our government have to select 40 or 20 people to be pain-free and the rest of us had to suffer? Just so people understand, I have been a cannabis user every day of my life since 2000, 2001. every day. I put cannabinoids in me, but that's broad spectrum, not just CBD.
Yeah,
I
you
use
have to have
THC.
both.
They have to have all of it.
Yeah.
The plant was made that, we have things that are called plant-based medicines for a reason.
Right.
We understand that you just listen to Albert Einstein. For every action is an equal and opposite reaction. There's something on this planet that was here, indigenous to this planet, that was created to be the opposite effect of anything that's happening here, from disease on down. So, as we let the rainforest get destroyed, we're probably destroying half of what could be future treatments for illness before we even find them.
Yeah.
But we've known, that neuroprotected, and there's a certain amount of neuroprotection that comes from cannabinoids. And I am, again, I'm not a doctor. And, doctors and scientists would say that I am what is called an N of 1. And what that means is that when you take a look at me, and you haven't researched me fully, but if I was, thrown in a test tube and looked at, I will guarantee you that what will come out the other end is that I predict and think that the only thing that protected me throughout my entire journey with MS, and has protected me right now since, I had a massive, class 4 stroke, hemorrhagic stroke, that most people, 50% of people die from.
Right.
But I survived it, and I'm back 100% right now, which is something that's really almost unheard of. And I believe that this is me talking, not a doctor talking, but I believe that it has been my use of cannabis that is the reason why I had some protection going in.
And you're hearing more stories like this, of people that are saying that they use the full spectrum of it. Sure. Not just the CBDs, but it's helping them with their ailments, like people that went through cancer treatment and stuff like that. Sure. And you don't hear that on the news. They don't try to put that on the news. It's always the propaganda that goes against.
They won't tell you the fact that we funded research to study it. I mean, the bottom line is, when you start to think about a plant like this is the only plant on the planet that we have a secondary sympathetic nervous system set up to be antagonized by. Every human being, every mammal on the planet has a secondary sympathetic nervous system called the endocannabinoid system. In your body, you have things that are called CB1, CB2 connectors that are literally there ready to be antagonized and influenced by cannabinoids that come.
They're like receivers for cannabinoids.
That's right, it's receivers. I'm saying those receivers then actually help your body produce your own type of cannabinoid, something that's called anandamide and the other one's called 2-AG. And those are the only two chemicals in your body that actually run in an opposite direction of the nervous system. Now, this has been here since we have been, little monkeys out on the savannah. So how dare you try to stop us from consuming something that was literally put here by nature for us to consume? And think in terms of the fact that, cannabis and hemp has been illegal since 1931. Most people, again, don't know. Made illegal in the United States by something called the Marijuana Tax Act. Not because it was the Marijuana Drug Act, the Marijuana Tax Act. That was something that was perpetrated against the American public, not by science, but by two, watching my mouth, two buttheads, one of which is called William Randolph Hearst and the other one Charles DuPont, who funded a guy by the name of Harry Anslinger, to actually propagate the propaganda against hemp, not because it was a drug. It was because, they figured, number one, William Randolph Hearst, who most people don't know, was the paper magnate of the world, and Charles DuPont was trying to create something called textiles. Before 1931, every piece of paper pretty much on the planet, the word canvas comes from cannabis. Yeah. Okay? So every wagon that went across the United States that took people west to discover this country was covered in hemp fiber. Yeah. We ate hemp fiber for breakfast during, the Civil War and during every one of our forefathers. A
lot of the ships during that time, their ropes were
not a lot. Every rope. Why? Because when they treated it with tar, it wouldn't rot in water. Yeah. Every one of your forefathers, George Washington, Thomas Jefferson, everyone grew hemp. If you were living in the United States.
It was like mandated.
Correct. In the United States, you were considered un-American in 1801 if you didn't grow hemp. Stop. Every bit of clothing. The only thing the entire the country had in common, every single soldier in the Revolutionary War was clothed in a hemp uniform.
Yeah.
The only thing that the North and the South had in common during the Civil War was that about 60 to 70%, almost 80% of the clothing worn during the Civil War was hemp clothing, not cotton.
Yeah.
Hemp.
And it's crazy because, back then those were considered the two big corporations, trying to keep cannabis and hemp out of the industry.
Worked so hard to outlaw it for 30 years to get the UN to write a ban on hemp trade in 1961.
And these are the same companies now that totally want to come in and invest and wipe away like the small business owners.
Absolutely.
That's the crazy thing that I see happening. I mean,
I've been so irritated in the last year, especially in the last year, because now all of a sudden, when you look at a lot of what are supposed to be, small cannabis companies popping up around the country, you got guys on the boards. People run out and put doctors on their board. Doctors who a year and a half ago were saying that hemp doesn't work, cannabis doesn't work. And now all of a sudden, because they see dollar signs, all of a sudden they think that it works.
Totally flip.
Why would I in any way, shape, or form trust anything out of their mouth?
Well, now you see so many companies, like, I can't tell you how many CBD companies I see out there, whether it's like people white labeling for other companies now. And I think we're going to see, hopefully, regulation within the CBD market, because it is kind of scary of like so many people trying to get in this just because of the dollar signs. But a lot of these people aren't doing it for the real health benefits. And
correct.
And some of it's fake CBD.
And a lot of the product out there has less than 5 milligrams of CBD in it. Some of it doesn't even have real CBD in it. Some of it has just, it doesn't have any in it.
There's more dollar signs on it than anything.
You've formulated, you've had your hands in all your formulations, correct?
Absolutely. I started, I have a podcast that anybody wants to get any of this kind of information I'm extolling right here. I'm doing pretty much the same thing you guys are trying to do, and that's trying to educate the public. I have a podcast that's called Let's Be Blunt with Montel. And that podcast's sole purpose is to provide the listener with some education so that they can make some good decisions when they go out looking for something for their family. So I've been interviewing some of the top doctors in the world and in the country, and a lot of personalities in the country talking about what's happening right now. But I don't think the voice is big enough. You can go up on YouTube, you can find Let's Be Blunt with Montel, and I'm on almost every one of the outlets that actually run, podcasts. We're running a little special contest right now. So if you run up and if you go up and you sign up for my podcast, you might be eligible to win, a magic butter making machine. Ooh,
nice.
Yeah, so sign up today, and your name will be in the mix, and we're giving away quite a few of those over the next couple of months. And the reason why I'm doing this is, to make sure that the demographic that really needs this the most is probably the demographic that is the most fearful of what we provide.
That knows the least.
Yeah.
Correct. Mm-hmm. You need to give them some information to help them be educated enough to know when they make a choice to buy something, they're buying something that's efficacious for their family, not just garbage.
And I think it's,
sorry. Go ahead.
And I think it's great because you're the perfect staple for this, because you've had such an amazing journey. You've had MS, you've had a stroke, and look at you. You're so athletic. You're definitely a game changer in the industry. You're an active snowboarder. I love to snowboard myself, and I saw a video of you the other day on Good Morning America. You were just like sipping down those mountains in Utah. So it just shows people who might be struggling with the same illness that you are that there is hope.
Absolutely. And I mean, I think that's the one thing that the cannabis industry does provide, and that is hope. It's not going to work for everyone. There's not a drug out there on the planet that works for everyone, but it might be that thing that you haven't done that you need to start doing. And it's just like, the whole idea of CBD. I saw a show the other day that really ticked me off where, they had a person said, well, we're going to do an experiment on CBD. So I got some of my staff members to try some CBD, and they did it for 7 days. For what? For 7 days?
7 days.
Are
I think
you
it's
crazy?
important to note, like, you can't just, like, I feel like a lot of people expect, like, oh, I'm going to take this tincture and try it out, like I'm having a headache or something like that. But you can't just take CBD once or twice or even THC or anything like that. It has to be a constant.
It's over the course of time. It has to be sort of like your vitamin regimen.
Mm-hmm.
It is
a vitamin.
It's a vitamin. It's a part of your endogenous endocannabinoid system. And so for you to be able to trigger that, and we know what that is, that system is what we believe, and science has stated unequivocally, is what causes cellular homeostasis. And what is cellular homeostasis? It's that Goldilocks zone, not too hot, not too cold, makes the cells work at their optimum function. So so to do so, you've got to feed that system. And you can't feed it once. You got to feed that system for probably 30 days.
Yeah.
If you really want to get some maximum effect, that is start taking CBD. Probably you ought to really begin the first week microdosing at between 10 to 20 milligrams 3 times a day, then cough it up to about 25 milligrams 3 times a day, then cough it up to about 50 milligrams 2 times a day. Get around the 100 milligram basis. But if you're just taking just CBD, that's not good enough.
Yeah,
it's going to have a little bit of effect,
Correct.
but not the full effect that it would have if you took full spectrum.
Some
Correct.
people's bodies are so different. With some people do better on a THC CBD. So
Yeah, the thing
Absolutely.
is that it's like you said, the more education, the better, because there's obviously, different options. Not everybody likes to smoke joints or blunts or bongs or pipes or whatever. Other people do edibles or even tinctures where they put it in their teas or their drinks.
Sure.
And it's important for them to know that there are these different options because, sometimes you get stuck with old information. Well, I don't want to smoke. It's too loud, or, I don't want it to affect me that way. But, if you do it in that form and you're microdosing it and you build your tolerance up, I think that's the best way to do it.
And until we really get the science done, which will probably take another 20 years to get through some of the science that needs to be done to be able to help people understand, a body weight ratio compared to what you're actually putting in your body. It behooves each person individually to experiment themselves.
Yeah.
You can try, a little bit of something with THC in it, but all of a sudden, what a lot of us don't even know here in this country is that, back in the 50s and 60s, America tried its best to grow CBD out of the plant. We kept trying to shoot for the higher level of THC, as if that's exactly the same thing that we've been doing in the last 10 years. You go into most dispensaries, they're going to give you something that says, oh, this is 91% THC. Stop with the stupid. The plant didn't grow that way.
no.
Right.
And if we really want to track this and go way back, you go back about 3,000 years, there were probably only about 7 indigenous plants on the planet. And now what we've done is crossbred them the same way we crossbred roses to make every color of pink that you want, every color of red that you want, but it's still a rose.
Right.
Okay? So at the end of the day, if you go back to the original genome, in the original genomes, you'd probably find that there were plants that, we know for a fact that when you plant a cannabis plant, the first 6 weeks to 8 weeks of the plant's growth, its predominant cannabinoid is CBG. It's not THC. It's not CBD.
Yeah, it doesn't produce
It's
the THC till after, yeah.
CBG turns into THC and CBD. That cannabinoid goes down after the first flowering. So now all of a sudden you got a plant that's got more THC and CBD in it, but the number for CBG goes down to 0.001%. So that's why you hear a lot of people calling CBG the God cannabinoid or the stem cell cannabinoid, because it's what turns into and modulates the other two. Well, why are we not researching right now the effect of maybe possibly putting a little bit more CBG in to formulations and looking at this and separating out? There's some research being done all over the country right now and all over the world where they're really literally trying to separate out all 160 of those cannabinoids and then go back in and reformulate those to elicit the response that you need.
That'd be really cool if the Dr. Green Thumb dispensary had something like that, right?
Oh, yeah. Have to look into that.
Yeah, well, but it's going to take a while. It's going to take a while because, right now we haven't even come to an agreement yet on how to actually process the plant. You still got buttheads out here right now that are literally as dumb as they could be trying to extract the THC and CBD using butane. Excuse me. How ignorant can you be? Would you walk out of the front door of this building and put your mouth around the exhaust pipe of a car? Then why the hell are you sucking in? Why are you sucking in a propane-based, chemical into your lungs? And we don't know. Nobody knows. Nobody's even testing it to figure it out. And
there's not enough research done on it yet
Correct.
to know what the long-term effects are going to be.
Exactly.
Correct. And when you look at somebody who says, well, it came in 500 parts per million. Really? And you think that's good? 500 little parts of butane went into your lungs.
Yeah.
It's sitting there. That's good for you?
That's
Stop.
unacceptable.
Okay, that's right. Come on, stop. And then we jumped over immediately to, supercritical CO2 and ethanol. Okay, I think those are two inert gases that have a lower evaporation point, and yes, would probably, you can get them down to 0 parts per billion, but we have people out here who don't even understand how to work the testing equipment. We haven't come up with a standardization on testing yet.
Yeah, because the industry is so young.
Correct.
They don't have the right scientists that know anything about the industry.
At the end of the day, it may sound as if I'm speaking against the industry, but I'm not. I think I'm speaking for the industry to do more research. And no, we don't need to wait 20 years to figure out whether or not this works. Remember, this has been around for 5,000 years. And we only had one person, literally one report of a death from consuming cannabis. And it really wasn't the cannabis. It was the fact that, the grower and the people who did literally subjected it to and allowed it to be subjected to black mold. So, it's not the plant.
Yeah.
And we don't need to have all the research to get it done.
I always say this on our show. Think of it as if you're going to a restaurant, right? You're going to be consuming the food, you're purchasing that food. You want to make sure that restaurant refrigerates the food, doesn't put any harsh chemicals in the food because you're consuming it. Think of it as the same as your cannabis. You want to know that it's clean, that it's been taken care of. There are people, unfortunately, that are trying to grow cannabis and putting like weed killer around the plants, and then they're smoking it, and these things can definitely harm you. It's not meant for your body.
That's why I'm glad a lot of these testing labs now exist. But, even then, I question the knowledge in how they're testing it, because who's to say that they bring in one, let's just say cannabis brand, and they have their cannabis or whatever product tested, and it tests dirty. How diligent are they on, getting all the measures it takes to clean their system out, so when they're testing the next product, that doesn't get tainted.
Yeah, there's still a lot of holes.
There's still a
There's a lot of holes. And, and again, one of the things that people need to understand, the plant will test. You can take one plant, test the bottom of it, the lowest bud on the plant, test the highest bud on the plant, and they will come out different.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It's a fact because, the plant is that way. So how do we really set the standards? And, there's something called ASTM. There's ways that we've had standards for other things, for food products for years. We can do the same thing when it comes to cannabis.
Absolutely.
And it should get done.
100%.
Yeah. Let me clean something up. As I said, I gave out the number for the patent. It's 6630507. Let me just read a little piece here for a second. The cannabinoids are found to have particular application to neuroprotectants. For example, in limiting neurological damage following ischemic insults, such as stroke and trauma, or in the treatment of neurodegenerative diseases, such as Alzheimer's disease, Parkinson's disease, HIV, dementia. This is what the U.S. government claimed back in 1992.
Wow.
I mean, really. And then you have, some beanhead like, the former Attorney General come in. We have no viable medical reason for cannabis. It's like, shut up.
Yeah.
It's like smacking them upside the head and throwing, and honestly, there's no reason why anybody listening shouldn't write a letter to your congressman or senator and say, how stupid can you be? Every year you vote in a budget. Every year that budget has funding in it for marijuana research.
Yeah, they just don't tell the public.
Why not ask the question?
They don't tell the public. The public has to ask that question.
Right.
For sure.
Right.
Do you think it's mostly because they're worried about the pharmaceutical industry, or is it just what do you think is the idea, or maybe it's just not enough education?
I think it's not enough education, and I'm not one of those to jump up and down and beat up the pharmaceutical industry. I don't believe there's anybody who goes to work every single day
with a bad intention.
With a bad intention to hurt people. They're going in there trying their best. They have their little niche that they studied in school for 10 years, and now they're at a point where they're a researcher and they're still studying that. But they've failed to recognize that there were other things being taught along the way. They've been teaching about the endocannabinoid system in a few medical schools for the last 10 years. But you ask most doctors and they have no idea what you're talking about. Why? Because they haven't spent the time going back and doing continuing medical education, and learning what they missed.
And I believe that's like a lot of the older doctors too.
Yeah.
Because
some of the younger ones too, my friend. I'm telling you, younger ones too. They get caught up in their way. It's like
the traditional.
I went to this school and
I paid a lot of money for this. I'm going to learn this information, and that's what I'm going to give to the people.
Correct.
Well, look at how many people think that you can get high off CBD or don't even know enough about it. It's like there's clearly not enough education being done. No matter how much we can try as advocates for it, we can only go so far. It's essentially on doctors and them to learn those things and educate their patients.
Well, I got to applaud the doctor that suggested to you? Because I think we need more doctors like that, you know, that are willing to break away from that chain of, you know, a lot of them come out of college with their debt, you know, their school debt, whatever, and
I'm still paying my debt
from
school.
and they have to pay that debt down. And when the pharmaceutical companies come to some young doctor and say, hey, we're going to give you X amount, you got to push these pharmaceuticals.
Yeah.
It's hard for them to say no, but some of them, you know, they want to do good and they know some of this stuff isn't working. So I applaud the ones that actually say, have you tried this?
I should add to the fact that the doctor who told me this back in 1991 said, you know, I'm going to tell you this, but I'm not going to tell anybody I ever said this. Don't tell anybody I ever said this. So I was like, okay, thanks, Doc. But at the same time, just think about that mentality.
Yeah.
Don't tell anybody I ever told you this. And how many other people could have had that conversation that's still walking in and getting the same conversation for opioid?
A very small number of people have, because there are a few of those doctors out there that have, you know, that they do the diligence on the industry too, and the possibilities of how you can treat people with cannabis. I believe some of them out there, you know, try to keep their knowledge up in terms of possibilities, right?
It's slowly starting to become a movement, though. I mean, I live in Florida now, I live in Miami, and the number of doctors, and again, this is a state where, you know, you've got a demographic, and let's be honest about this. You know, I think part of what this industry has failed to recognize is that as we move and push to try to get recreation or adult use states, most people think that your primary consumer is going to be the 18 to 34, which is the same thing that people shoot for when it comes to all marketing and advertising. But that's the least money-laden demographic in America. The biggest group with money and its disposable income in this country are baby boomers.
Yeah.
And let's recognize, why has the industry really burgeoned the way it has? Why have states started to pass legislation the way they have? Because the baby boomers are in charge. And the baby boomers remember that they were the ones partying, smoking when they were in high school and in college, and they've had successful lives. Yeah. So now they're sitting back going, wait a minute, stop. Why do I have to take 25 pills when I could take, you know, a lot of people don't know that in Israel, cannabis is a geriatric drug. Yeah. You turn 70 years old, you can walk down about 5 different hospitals, show them your ID card, and bingo, bango, they roll you out an ounce of pot.
Yeah. And I'll tell you, in most dispensaries, it's a lot of older folks coming in for medicine.
Yeah.
Correct. Older folks who were tired of taking 6 and 7, 8 medications. Yeah. Right.
You know, when you're in pain, you get desperate. You want some relief. And people, I mean, we all know the opioid epidemic. You know, I mean, you have to be blind not to see that and what's going on with that. And to find relief, everybody just wants to find relief.
Yes.
And if you can do it with something as simple as a hemp plant or a cannabis plant, and you have our tinctures are broad spectrum, like you said. It's not just about an isolate CBD. You got to get the whole plant. Like our dog treats, they're cold pressed whole hemp, all natural. So it's all about giving people the right ingredients and processing it the correct way. But I know of a personal story that, because I work directly with people that use our products, I follow feedback from 7 years. Of one of my patients that's using Oxy, right? Former military, 7 years, bad back. 6 months is all it took. Since December 24th of this past year, completely off. Just on topicals and our broad spectrum tincture.
There you go.
It's real stories. It's stuff like that drives me every single day to wake up and do what I do.
And there are millions of those stories across the country. Not thousands, millions of those stories across the country. Yet, the government and certain doctors still say, well, no, you're still just talking about an N of 1. No, we're not. We're talking about an N of 1,000,000. You know what I mean?
The thing is, what's the hardest part in trying it? That's what I don't understand. Like, these people could at least try it and see how it does. The worst case, it's like, hey, it doesn't work.
Right.
Yeah, it does come from Mother Earth, and here we are enhancing, genetically modifying, even in certain cases, things that we consume, and it hasn't been working, and it hasn't been tested more than 100 years, so there has been side effects. So another interesting thing, you've been in the military for 22 years, and going back to what Brian said, have you ever seen people become addicted to certain painkillers?
Oh, absolutely. I mean, absolutely. The military, again, I just interviewed Ricky, and, I've done a couple of interviews with multiple football players. The other night, everybody in the country got all excited because they got to sit up until 11:30 at night and watch guys run into each other at 60 miles an hour for our entertainment. Yeah. And don't recognize the fact that 100% of them, not 90%, not 80%, 100% of them are going to be in pain and be injured in about 10 years. When they retire, they are going to bear the brunt of what they did as professional football players for our entertainment. And a lot of people don't know that to walk out on that field the other night, probably 50, 60% of them you did check. If you had a camera back in the dugout, you would have seen them all lined up in a row with a doctor sticking tramadol in their butt. Or, sticking some sort of drug in their butt to get them to go out on the field to bang against each other for our entertainment. Yeah. And I'm not knocking the sport. If that's what you want to do, you want to play the sport, go right ahead. But let's also recognize that contact sports could be helped by the use of cannabis, because we do know, just like I just read, the government understands that it's a neuroprotectant.
And you hear about more and more athletes wanting to use cannabis as their therapy, as their medicine, as opposed to the over-counter drugs. I mean,
because they see what happens.
Oh yeah, they're the ones who have to deal with it. I mean, it may suppress something for a time, but it's doing it. It doesn't speak to the damage that it's doing somewhere else in your body, like your liver, for instance. I mean, your liver has to process all those pharmaceuticals, and if you become addicted to it, that's another problem that develops later.
Yeah. But what are your social media handles for everybody that is not following you at the moment? They can follow you and see your project right now, Military Makeover, and other things. Yeah,
militarymakeover.com. You can go up and find out where that's at. That's on Lifetime every Friday morning. And then, of course, you can follow me on Let's Be Blunt with Montel, where we talk about everything and anything cannabis and hemp related, to make sure, again, like I said, I try my best to educate people so that they can make a good discerning decision when they go into a dispensary or into a shop. They get enough information to understand why they're making choices for their family. And then, montelmedia.com. You can also find out what I'm doing there.
Perfect.
Absolutely.
Thank you so very much,
thanks for having me.
Thanks for being on the show.
Thanks for having us.
Absolutely.
But thanks for coming down.
Absolutely. So thanks for having me.
Yes. Well, thank you everyone for watching. I'm Yunitza Munoz, and I'm here with my amazing co-host.
I'm Brian with Green Care Solutions.
And it's your girl, Angela Mazzanti.
I'm BREAL.
Thank you guys for tuning in here on NBC Radio, iHeartRadio, and Spotify. Until next time.